Just a little bit of a preface here. My setup is kind of strange because of the way that I'm doing this presentation. I actually have the chat open on my other computer. So I'll try to glance over. If I'm glancing over this way, that's because I'm looking at the chat. I'll try to glance over here from time to time to catch any questions if I can. Then I have the screen capture that you're seeing is my main screen on my laptop, actually. And then what you're actually seeing is a document camera that's pointed at a touch screen that's attached to my laptop here, because I wanted to be able to show you me actually poking the buttons and seeing the animations and stuff that go on. So given that the advice for most presentations is not to have demos or to record your demos, and to have slides to make it so that if things won't go wrong. Well, I totally didn't follow that. This whole presentation that you'll see is completely written in LabVIEW. So it's like all of my presentation is demo. So something might go wrong, we'll see, and I might have to restart some things, hopefully not, but we'll just kind of go from there and see what we can do. But yeah, what you'll see is none of this is slides. The whole thing is one big LabVIEW program that I wrote to demonstrate these functionalities. So let's see. How are we doing? It looks like we got just about everyone here that's going to join us. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my introduction here. So first off, I go by Q. My brothers kind of named me that because of being a fan of Star Trek. But also my first job out of school, they nicknamed me Q because I made all the gadgets that made their testing easier. So that's how I got that nickname, being that my name's Quentin, kind of fits. Currently, I work for Tesseract. I'm a certified LabVIEW architect and a LabVIEW champion. Here's how you can get a hold of me. My email at Tesseract. I also have my own domain, q@qsi.dev, or my LinkedIn or Twitter handles. I'm really involved in the LabVIEW community. I'm one of the board of directors at GCentral. I've written a lot for the LabVIEW wiki, and I'm an admin of the LabVIEW wiki. I'm a board member this year of the GLA Summit. I'm a member of the AF Guild, and I'm on the forums a lot, both on Lava and on the NI forums. Everything going okay? Yeah, all right. And then as far as open source code, I wrote the QControl Toolkit. I have some other products out there, a formatting toolbar, property browser you can look at, a class method node, which is kind of like a property node, but that you can wire class. Well, it's kind of like an invoke node, but you can wire classes into it, or by reference classes into it. And then I have more tools that are going to come out of this presentation. Some of the animation tools I've already posted, but there's some that I haven't yet. So there's another toolkit out there for animation that you can find on vipm.io that I've already published, and you'll see that used in this presentation. All right. So brief introduction of Q controls. Most of these Q controls are not written really for a touch screen, but Q controls don't have to be. Q controls are an alternative for X controls, and they use object-oriented programming to do this. I find that they're easier than X controls to handle and to use. They work better than X controls. X controls tend to be crashy and just not very good to use, especially when you start using them in object-oriented or start using pack project libraries or anything like that. By that point, you don't want to use X controls anymore. QControls are a lot better. They've been around since 2012. I've been developing them for a long time, and I develop in them a lot. The first real release in a VI package was 2015. I received the Community Contribution Award in 2018 at NI Week. Works with 2015 and newer. And so there's where you can get it. See, is there any questions so far? Oh, yeah. Jason, we ought to talk about it some more. I can show you it. It's using something called Xnodes, which is not something you can really use in PPLs. Watch Darren's presentation on the ludicrous ways to fix LabVIEW code. He'll talk about that. But here's some of the QControls I've created. This one's a rich text box. So here I'll select the word here, and I'll come in here and I'll change it to 90-point font. And I'll change the color to, blue. And this is just a string control, basically, that's doing this. And it's storing information under the hood in kind of a HTML-like-ish way to do that. Here's another QControl where you can select the color. So you can select a color, and it tells you the RGB and the hex and stuff. The date selector that does the pop-up for LabVIEW. This is basically the same thing, but as a calendar that you could put on your front panel. So you can select the date. You can go back to today, that sort of thing. And then this is a pie chart that's really just drawn in a picture control. But you can see you pass it an array of data, and it just formats the pie, and then you can click on it, and it pops out the different slices. So these are just some varying QControls that I've written in the past. But pretty much all of the aspects you see of this presentation are other QControls, like this pop-out menu, the button and how it animates. All of these are different QControls. So what we're talking about today is kind of creating a smartphone-like user interface in LabVIEW. And so here's some of my do's and don'ts, and they're really just guidelines. Make sure to use standard iconography. Don't reinvent where things are. You want people to intuitively have a feel for what things are. For example, like a navigation hamburger menu. Add swishiness. Swishiness is my technical term for animations, but you don't want to add too many animations. You want it to be a good fit for your application. Use splitters, but limit one control per pane when you use splitters. This is a way to make things easily resizable, because then you can size those things with the pane. Make animations timing based rather than iteration based. I had a situation where I wrote an animation that was iteration based, so like 100 iterations it would fade in. Well, I put this on my technician's computer that was a lot slower, and then it took 30 seconds for it to fade in rather than the half a second. So if you make things timing based, you might not see the animation, which is okay, but at least it doesn't slow the user down. So that fade in, instead of it showing a nice fade in, might just blink in, but at least, it's not slowing anyone down. You want to minimize clicks. You don't want to hide things in a bunch of menus and make it really hard to find things. Also, when you're doing a touch screen, right-click menus are hard. I mean, basically, a right-click menu is holding your finger down for longer, and that's not really a good user experience. So if you're designing for a touch screen, try not to use right-click menus at all. Don't make UI elements too small. If you're doing a touch screen, they got to be able to be poked with your fingers. And tab controls really make things hard to resize. And so you'll see in some of my stuff today, it looks like a tab control, but what's really happening is the tab is just control like buttons I'm not actually putting things in the pages. And then what you see is not really inside of the tab control. I'm controlling it other ways, like having a sub panel or something like that. And so the tab really is just switching between what you see, not using the whole page. I guess that kind of makes sense. I'm not sure how to describe that, but you'll see it. So first thing I want to talk about when we talk about animation is easing functions. Now, easing functions is really just a bunch of mathematical functions to help you do the positioning or the resizing. So right now, this is just linear. If I just click on this button, it's just going to go up and down and whatever. You know, okay, it moves around, but it's not that interesting. If you come in here and you select one of these others, like you can do it in, which basically in means at the start. So there it starts slow and then stops. Out will slow down at the end. Or you can do in and out, which does them both. You can see the profile here. By doing these easing functions, you're making the fill a lot better than, like the rate of change feel better than just having it be linear. And there's some fun ones too I've programmed in here. You can get all of these from this website. Oh, you can't really see it. It's easings.net is where I got all these. Some of these are really nice, like the in and out back. So it like stretches back a little bit first before it moves. Or elastic, makes it bounce like it's an elastic. Here, we'll do it on both sides. Where this bounce is really a fun one, especially the bounce out. So wing, it's like it's a bouncing ball. You can do this for size too. So if we did it for size, there we go. You can also do another one, not in this list, but there's one called Jiggle that I programmed in. And I made it so that it giggled and ran away every time I pressed it. So I don't know if you can hear the giggle or not, but so you can see that jiggle function I used on that last slide. Every time I hit one of those check boxes, it jiggled a little bit to know that, hey, it was pressed. On a smartphone, you probably could attach that to also the vibrating motor so that you get that tactile, hey, you clicked on this thing. Oh, good, you did hear it. Awesome. I was hoping it would come through. Okay, swipe is another one here. Oop. One moment. I was diagnosing this earlier and left a breakpoint in. Oops. Like I said, the problem about having your whole presentation be a demo, right? Let's see. All right, get rid of this. Okay, there we go. So now we have the swiping functions. If you know who this guy is, then you've had kids. This is a cartoon character named Swiper from Dora the Explorer. I thought I'd put him in because of swiping, but different kind of swipe, I guess. So here's my menu bar up here. It has functions where you can drag it and let go, and it slows down. You can drag it all the way, and it stops, and it springs back. You notice when you get to an edge and you like grab it and start to drag it, it's almost like it's attached to an elastic. It starts to slow down and doesn't move as far. And then you spring back and it goes. All of these things are done through just the QControl. You can see the QControl here for move. Basically, there's an init, and then the move is really, I don't know. Let's see. It's probably easier to see. There's the start. I'm not really going to go into this code much. I mean, it's going to be hard to see it all on the screen anyway. But suffice it to say, one of the things I want to do is isolate some of these functions, like this is as it's moving, how it's changing position and keeping track of position and your state. When you go into overshoot, it keeps track of your overshoot. Let's see, and there's one I want to show here. There's drag. Let's see, slow down. Maybe it's in this one. The slowdown is right there. Okay, here's the slowdown. I have two different slowdown values here. One of the slowdown values is if it's not in overshoot. And the faster slowdown is when it is in overshoot, so that it slows down faster. Like if I were to grab it and drag it and you see it going all the way off versus just having it slide across. All of this stuff is built into this QControl, but I am going to separate this slider functionality code and make it a toolkit too. So the toolkit that's already released has all the easing functions. So that helps you do the position changes, the size changes, maybe some other things like fade in, fade out, and those sort of things. This toolkit will be coming soon to help you do these swipe functions and to make a nice swipe menu. And then on the selections, I do actually have it select. So if I clicked on like GDevCon, it's going to open their website. And the way that it tells that you made a selection is basically if it didn't move in between the mouse up and the mouse down. So if it was within 1 pixel of movement, just in case I did accidentally swipe it a little bit as I was clicking, then it would know not to continue from there. All right, any questions so far? Nope, I'm not seeing any yet. All right, we're going to go on then. So there's a swipe menu that you can do in LabVIEW. Now, this screen has a whole bunch of items to it. So when you're doing any UI elements, there's a whole bunch of things you can do. You can do, hamburger menus. A bento menu is kind of like what you would traditionally think of as an iPhone with all of the little icons in a grid. And an accordion would be to hide and show things like this menu. When you pull it out and put it back in, that's being an accordion. A card would be like the first slide that I showed with all of my information. Each one of those things is called a card, and it might expand or contract to show different things. Carousels you've seen on websites and stuff where you're swiping through different graphics. I actually have a carousel kind of later in this presentation. Some of these other ones, let's skip down. Let me show you this icon one. Well, let's show you the breadcrumb one here. So this breadcrumb one is going to show you the breadcrumb trail as I navigate my disk here. I'm going to go to C. I'm going to go to, let's see, my code. I'm going to go to my presentations, go to smartphone-like UIs. You can see, oops, it's slowing down just a little bit. I'll slow down a bit. You can see it kind of showing up at the top here, my trail of where I've been. It's slowing down quite a bit. Hopefully we're all right. Okay, so what's nice about these is this, if I want to jump back to any point, I can just click, okay, I want to go back to that folder, and I'll go back to my presentations. Navigate down deep again. I don't know, to the actor here. And then in the QControl, I programmed that you could change the delimiter. So changing the delimiter there and being able to go back to my other folders. So that's an idea of a breadcrumb trail. Let's go to icons. So here, I don't really have a lot to show for the icons. I just wanted to show a list. These are my favorite open source free software that you can get icons or create your own. The icon library is just a free set of icons. That's what's being displayed on the right-hand side of the screen here. Paint.net is a free, almost Photoshop-like application. Icon8 Lunacy is a vector graphic program. I find this one a lot easier for me to use than, say, Inkscape, which is also creates vector graphics. Lunacy just seems easier to me because I'm a mechanical engineer and I think about Boolean operations and stuff. The Lunacy makes that a lot easier. Figma is a great application for mapping out your UX. A lot of graphic designers will use this now for mapping out websites and things like that. Let's see, Jason, you had a question. For programmatic control over Q controls, like implementing show and hide and enable disable logic on a UI, do you pass around references? What ends up happening, Jason, for Q controls is you put in the reference to into a constructor of the class, and then you pass around that class wire as if it was the reference, and you do all of your manipulation through that class wire after that. What you get with Q controls is that each one will spin up its own asynchronously running event handler that you can then put all of your UI event code in. What that does is it encapsulates all that UI event code away from your main application. Performance and CPU load, I'm not sure what you mean. You mean for all of these animations? It depends. Most of these, the animations are over really quick, and then the Q control will go into an idle state. So it might be a lot for just the half a second, but we're not talking about using this stuff for high-speed data acquisition type things. This is acting on user interface human timing, which is, you know, anything reacting faster than a half a second, a person's not really going to notice. So it just depends on your application. A couple more. It looks like someone said draw.io is another good program. I haven't used that one, but I've used GIMP, which is another kind of Photoshop-like thing. Canva lets you do, like if you wanted to implement like those cards, it helps you kind of implement that, especially for social media. And Blender is a specifically like 3D animation type program. So did I answer your questions? Right now my load on this is probably pretty high, but I'm running LabVIEW, screen capture, recording, and hop in all at once. But I think normally these animations run pretty quick and don't really bog down the system that bad. As an input field goes, you could use the on-screen keyboard. So here's the Windows on-screen keyboard. So I could type in something. Let's see. I won't show you my fingers poking it, but let's type in. Let's see. Oh, yeah, it's doing it. Oh no. Oh no, it's doing the keyboard here. There we go. So there's hello. So using the Windows on-screen keyboard, I mean, it's kind of nice. You can do hotkeys and control functions and all of that sort of thing. But I found in one of my applications, we wanted to lock the user out from being able to do all that kind of stuff. So in the case of the on-screen keyboard, you can use that Control Win O to launch it. That's what I'm basically invoking when I hit this button. We wanted to have something more seamless, and so we programmed our own on-screen keyboard. So we can have hello world. We implemented long clicks to be able to do like select and copy and paste and cut and all of that stuff. We'll just do that. But we also wanted to have separate keyboards for text versus numeric. So, you know, turn to page 394. If you get the Harry Potter reference there. Also, if you wanted to add, by doing our own, we can do stuff like adding text into a multi-column list box. So I can select this, say select all, cut, and say hello world again. And then you can see it replaced my text into my multi-column list box. So something you ought to consider if you want to roll your own or use the on-screen keyboard. I plan on publishing the one I programmed when I can get time to get all of these things rolled out into packages. So another thing that you need for UI is a loader or a throbber. Basically, this is when you have an undeterminate length of time of something getting done, where a progress bar wouldn't really fit. So here I have, you can use animated GIFs, but I found that the more modern animated GIFs crashed LabVIEW. So these are all older animated GIFs that I have on the front panel here. And so those seem to work. This one's hard to see, but it's just a kind of a bar that goes across. Here's a Rubik's Cube one. And here's another just circular one. And another box one. So those are just animated GIFs on my screen. Now I had a situation where the user that I was programming for locked down the operating system down so far the animated GIFs wouldn't run for some reason. And it ended up just looking like a big black box. And so I ended up having to come up with something else. And I basically loaded all of my pictures. Oh, come on, there we go. I loaded all of my pictures into individual frames of a picture ring, and then I animate through the picture ring. One of the cool things that you can do with that then is, it's not coming across, I think, through the video very smooth, but this would be a lot smoother of an animation, or you would be able to see the smooth animation usually. Maybe on the video you'll be able to see it, but this way it was, you know, built in LabVIEW. It wasn't something special, and you can actually control like the frame rate and all sorts of stuff this way if you wanted it to move faster or slower. So now modal elements. When you have a dialog box, normally you're going to have it be modal. But if you notice, like on web or on smartphone applications, you can dismiss dialog boxes by clicking outside of the dialog box. And so here I'm going to show just a modal dialog box first. And so here's my modal. You can notice if I click outside of it, it's not letting me dismiss. Yeah, dialog boxes don't necessarily have to have a cat on them, but mine do, at least for this application. So if I hit OK, it dismissed through the OK button. So let's go to this other one. If we go to dismissible, so now this dialog box is a little different. I don't have to have like the title bar and stuff. I don't have the X in the corner. I can still dismiss them through the buttons, but now I can also dismiss it by clicking outside the dialog. So we'll launch it again. I can still click the OK button. I can still click the cancel button. but now I have the opportunity to click outside of the dialog box. So just something to think about. What are your users going to be used to if you're programming this to act like to be on a tablet or something? You might want to consider making your dialog boxes dismissible this way. All right, just a couple more for this. The meatballs menu, that's like if you have the ... That's good if you want other options. You know, some other things in here, sidebars, which is kind of like what you're seeing. You know, lots of different things. I'm going to come here to the picker. So a picker is kind of like a drop-down box, but it's more compact. Essentially, you can come in here and pick a different date. You know, I want to pick, okay, the 22nd of November, let's say 2025. Oops. Well, I don't know where the days went. We'll click on today. There we go. Something happened there. I also have it reacting with the calendar here so that I can click on a date and it will swipe forward to the date. I originally gave this presentation in Colorado at GDevCon NA. We're going to just swipe up, and I don't know, we're going to pick Kansas for some reason. And we're going to swipe up. Let's see, actually, I'm going to swipe down and pick Thailand here because I lived in Thailand for 2 years. So we're going to, there it is, Thailand. So this is a way to do something other than a dialog box. It looks like a little drum kind of rolling. You can populate these from a file or database, just like you could do like a drop-down list. So these are some elements that you're used to from other smartphone devices and other applications that you probably have on there. Okay, let's go into multi-touch. So by default, LabVIEW does not have multi-touch. I got multi-touch. I was originally trying to do it myself by trying to capture these multi-touch events from Windows, but it was just being way too hard. And then I found this toolkit from Alldredge, and they already have it. It is a paid-for toolkit, but if you need it, then if you need multi-touch, then this is the way to go. You can get it from their website. You can try it out, or vipm.io, but it captures those gestures. It registers your windows for multi-touch. I had to do some fancy things to make sure it was enabled or disabled at certain times. So you'll see that as I play with it. But why would you use it? So this is one example. Let's say you have a safety feature where you want to make sure the technician's hands are free and away from the testing device before you operate it. So you can see here I have two buttons. I can't press both buttons with one hand. They're just too far apart. So I have to use both hands, and as soon as I let go of a finger, it's going to start the countdown again. It's saying, okay, you have to hold both fingers here for 5 seconds until the machine will start. So, you know, consider this maybe like a safety screen. It takes 5 seconds for a safety screen to come down before your machine starts. We'll turn off the machine. We can run it again. One thing that I noticed that this toolkit does, though, is this interrupts your mouse, your traditional mouse functions. So if I try to go do something else now, some of these things aren't going to work. And so I have to basically say, okay, turn that off. And now I'll be able to navigate to my next screen. So here's some other reasons to do the multi-touch. So here's some, again, Harry Potter stuff. So here's just a picture control, but I'm going to turn on, okay, this is kind of like the carousel. I'm going to swipe through my pictures here. So here's some of my pictures from Harry Potter World in Florida. Now let's say I want to zoom in on this one. Okay, so I'm going to put on zoom. I'm going to zoom in. Maybe I want to pan. And so it's registering 2 fingers to pan so that I can move my picture around here. Maybe I'm going to rotate and so on. So some of the things that you can do with the multi-touch here. All right. Last but not least, here's my wish list of things I wish LabVIEW had. Oh, I have to turn that multi-touch stuff off again before it will let me select this. Here we go. I wish LabVIEW would handle vector graphics better. Right now, you can put like transparent PNGs and stuff on your front panel to make things look cool, but you can't really resize them. In fact, I don't resize them in LabVIEW. Always resize them in one of those other graphics programs first, and then bring them back into LabVIEW, or it'll get all pixelated and messed up. I wish LabVIEW had a higher resolution picture control. You can't put very big pictures in that picture control, which is why all my pictures there were sized down. I wish it could handle bigger pictures. I wish it could draw the pictures a little better. I wish it had easier design for responsiveness. Responsiveness being the web version of that term, which is like resizability and having things reposition. There are some toolkits out there that help you do it in LabVIEW, but they're all not very easy to use. I know this was something they were trying to cover in NXG. I hope it's something that they bring into LabVIEW somehow. Oh, I've got another question here. So you installed QControls. Those are the ones that are built in to the toolkit. There are ones that are published. If you search on NI forums for QControl enthusiast, there is a community forum on the NI forums, and there is a list of other community contributed QControls. If you go to GitLab and search for my GitLab stuff, well, thank you for that, Jason. My GitLab stuff, I've published some more. Not all of these that I've used today, I've published yet. I hope to have them all packaged and put into individual like BIPM packages and distribute later. Lots of cool, I've made lots of cool ones. There's other people that have made some really cool ones as well. I know that someone's made a data grid, so you can have I've made one, but there's another person that made their own that lets you do, multi-column list box with different data types in each column and handle those. So yeah, they're out there. They're just not built in. So some of the other things that I wish LabVIEW had in it, programmatically changeable decals on buttons. Right now, you can't change a decal on a button programmatically. You'd have to have separate buttons and like hide and show those buttons if you wanted it to appear as the decal was changing. Make decorations easier to work with VI Server. Right now, decorations, you can get the references to all your decorations, but they would be in an array, and they're in an array of Z order, or kind of in an array of the order that you put them down, unless you changed which one you bring to front. And so it's really hard to find a specific decoration that you want to manipulate programmatically. You can still manipulate decorations programmatically to a certain extent, but it's just hard to get the right reference to the right decoration. I wish tab controls would act like a pane. So when you had a tab, what's in that tab is like a subpanel, or like would act like if it was splitters and that was a separate pane inside of there. Then things would be able to resize better inside of there and stuff like that. But right now it doesn't work that way. I would love to have them handle multi-touch gestures. Just there's a lot of cool things that we could do with that. Right now, cursors don't work in subpanels. And the reason why is the way that the cursor functions in LabVIEW work is they have to have a handle to the window that the cursor is being used in. And so if it's in a subpanel, there's no handle to that window. And so then you have, if you use something like Panel Manager from MGI, they handle this where they basically back up and find out what is the top level window and what is the handle for that, and then sets the cursor. Otherwise, it just errors out and the cursor won't do anything in a subpanel if your VI is running in a subpanel. Also, coordinates don't react correctly in a subpanel for some reason. If you try to align something to a button, it's really hard if your VI is in a subpanel because the coordinates mess up. So you got another question here. How does the app adjust to different screen size resolutions? Right now, I still just program to a specific resolution. That's where the whole easier responsive design would come in. That's something that's lacking in LabVIEW, is there isn't really a good way to do that. Yeah, web UIs do it better. So if that's a way that you can go, web VIs don't have all the different types of controls. You can't use QControls in a web VI right now. And so, you know, as long as a web VI has the controls that you need, that's one way that you could do it. Oh, not a web VI, a web UI. Yeah, if you wanted to write your whole UI in a web, but then it would mean creating it in another programming language, not in LabVIEW. If you're okay with doing that, then that's an option. And there are a lot of web controls out there for other languages. Windows transparency right now, you can't have parts of your window transparent unless you do some fancy Windows stuff and set a color to be transparent. I wish they had something built in. You can't control an indicator transparency right now in LabVIEW. That would be really nice to be able to fade in or out different controls. And I think this last one they actually did implement. I think it's in LabVIEW 2022, where you can change the Z order programmatically. It was something that was coming for a long time, and then it got put on hold, but I think it's implemented now. This program that I wrote is in LabVIEW 2020, so I didn't have that option. Oh no, Christina's answering. Okay, so it's still on hold. Okay. So Z order is something that I wish I had. There's some, like in my info screen back at the start, when I first programmed this and I opened one of these up, the other buttons would still show up on top. And that was a problem. The way I got around it is I hide those. And you can see they re-show when I close it. But if I could mess with Z order, then I could put this guy on top. I wouldn't have to hide those. Okay, so that's my wish list. And like I said, part of these animation tools are already published and on vipm.io. Other parts I still would like to publish, but I just haven't had the time yet, but they're coming soon. So is there any other questions? Let's see. Let's see, I got coordinates to work in subpanels. Yeah, there's some tricks that you have to do, and sometimes you have to pass in the reference to the subpanel into the VI that the subpanel is in so that you can correct for the position. As long as you do that, you can correct for the position, but it's not easy. Yeah, I've done that. Because I've had situations where I have like a button and then I want it pop up, which is just another VI running as a modal dialog, to pop up right under the button as if it was like a drop-down list or something. And to get to convert from the VI coordinates to the screen coordinates. If it's not running in a subpanel, there's methods for that. You just use the invoke node, and there's methods to convert from pane to panel and from panel to screen coordinates. If you're running in a subpanel, though, like Alex is saying, there's some other things you have to do to correct for the VI that's running in the subpanel in order to convert all the way to the screen coordinates. Cool. Any other questions? Not seeing any questions pop up. I'm reachable through email or other means. I can stick around for a while longer and ask and answer questions or show other things. I have other presentations out there on Q controls and an intro to Q controls. You can find those through the LabVIEW wiki. If you go back to the LabVIEW wiki and go to NI Week 2018, that was the first time I introduced Q controls at an NI Week presentation, and that gives you a good introduction. If you're wondering how to get into how to program a Q control, install the toolkit, and in the help there is a pretty good getting started that shows you how to program just a string field to recognize a phone number. So that's one way to do it. So is it a huge amount of effort to create UIs like this? Quite a bit of effort, but what I'm hoping is if I publish some of these Q controls, then they'll be easily reusable. That's the nice thing about Q controls, is it encapsulates all of the user interface events into the Q control itself so that it's easily reused. So those will come later, hopefully in the next few months, but it depends. All of this stuff I wrote on my own time and donate to the community, so it just depends on free time and stuff like that. So awesome, thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm good, and feel free to contact me if you have questions offline in other ways, and talk to y'all later. Thank you. Thank you very much. Stick around if there's any questions. I'll try to watch the chat. Oh, sorry you missed part of it, but hopefully we got it recorded and you can join that way. I tried to record my screen here too, which was acting a little bit faster than what was happening on Hopin. So I'll share my video with the organizers. Hopefully that might be easier. I don't know if we can mesh them together, the sound and stuff, but is this my own toolkit? The QControl Toolkit I programmed, but I share it already, and it's been shared for a number of years now. It's on vipm.io. Let's see, let me get you a link. Go to my packages here, QControl. There you go. And it's free to use. Yeah. So the keyboard entry, like the on-screen keyboard, is that what you're meaning? I just basically capture the key down, and it tells me what key it is, and then I handle things accordingly. If it's just a ASCII character, I print it. It captures other things too, like backspaces and things like that. And so then I know how to do the backspace. It should work on a tablet. So you're saying, okay, yeah, that's if I was capturing the key from a keyboard. Sorry. The on-screen keyboard, they're basically just a bunch of buttons that I register the events for. And so I know that they pressed the H key or whatever by just taking the event from that button being pressed. Does that make sense? I do it a little bit fancier than just like having an event for every single key. I do dynamic events and register the whole array of buttons. So it makes it a little bit smaller programming. Hopefully I'll share that soon too, so that people can use it. Makes it a little bit more seamless than the on-screen keyboard. In the application I used it in, the on-screen keyboard would let them do a whole bunch of other things that I didn't want the user to be able to do, like switching between apps. I wanted the application to be front and center, and that's all they could do. So that's why we had implemented our own keyboard. Yeah, I have like a shift button and all of that stuff. Yeah, I had to make sure to handle it. So like if the shift button was held down, let's see, if we go to the keyboard, UI elements, input field. See, I have shift button. Well, let's see. That's actually the cap locks button. The shift button only holds down for one letter, and then it returns back to the other letter. This one does kind of have a long click. So you can do select all, you can do cut, you can do paste. Oops, I'm blocking it. Paste, all of that stuff. And it uses the Windows, excuse me, the Windows clipboard there, so that if you're pasting and copying, it can copy and paste from other applications too. I know that was kind of defeats the purpose of, like I said, it being integrated, but I don't know. There might be reason to need to copy and paste from Notepad or something like that.